Now next I'm gonna recreate some demos that I see other people do. I don't actually do them myself, so I'm not very good at them. It's just to see a point, okay? And I'm not, the people that I'm copying these demos from, I'm not saying what they do is fake. I'm just trying to explain to you that it may not be what he explains. And again, that doesn't mean he's on purposely deceiving people. It could just be that is how he understood it from his master. But there is also a chance where he's just not telling the truth, because otherwise he wouldn't be able to charge you as much money and keep you as long to pay him that money. Anyway, so another demo that I see people do is when you stand like this, and two people, they will push head on each other, and he will say, if you push me and I'll resist you with force, then I'm like, unstable. But the moment I connect and use song and stuff, then you see that he moves back, okay? And then I can further go say that, like when I'm doing this, if I use force, you can feel it right here, but if I use connection and song, then you don't feel the hand. I mean, do you feel that?
Yeah.
Right, so you fit the description.
Very slightly, yes.
Very slightly. Yeah. But actually, again, what happened is I'm disconnecting all my skeletal structures to a point where all my joints are extended so that his force, receiving any of my joint. Right. The reason you move back is because you receive if you receive the force on your elbow or on your shoulder, it creates it gets stuck, and when it gets stuck, it will push you backwards that way. Or you try to move it down and it gets stuck by your waist, and that's how you move backwards through here. Depending on where you move back, it just shows you where your force got stuck. But if all the joints are extended, at the same time I'm also projecting my ep, right, behind him. Then what happens is when he pushes me, he actually feels a force pushing him out. Now, when I say I project my E, right, it's not something magical, right? It's just a way to guide my structure. So when I don't project my E, then all what happens is I'm connected, but if I don't actively push him, I'm going to get pushed back. But the moment I connect my E, then I'm not actively pushing him, but whenever he's pushing me, it's basically circling back out towards the back of him. You feel that difference, right?
Yeah.
And that's basically what enables him to push himself out. So I can say he's pushing himself backwards, but I can also say it's because I'm projecting my E, that's why he's moving backwards. So they actually still caused by me. It's just a different matter of description or perspective. But if you just stand here and you relax and you song and you haul yourself out, nothing will happen. Okay. Well, once it will happen, you'll get pushed back. Okay. And furthermore, this only works when there is a limited amount of force applied to the whole system. Okay. If you apply a lot greater force, then there is a point where this stance is not sufficient. Okay. For example, if you're standing like this and I'm standing like this, then it's far more difficult to resist a person. And I have met people in real life who could do that to other people, but the moment, you pretend you're me, right? So you stand like this. The moment I came up to experience with this guy, the moment I start applying force, he gets forced back. Okay, because I know how to apply force in an efficient way, and it basically is greater than his system can take. I mean, I'll give you another example, right? A couple of years ago, on my last day in my annual China trip, I was training by the Pearl Bamboo Park in the morning. I was going to the airport in the evening, and then my Taichi master's Taichi brother, he came and he started criticizing me and my Taichi brother and Taichi sister's practice, and I wasn't very happy about it. My Taichi brother was very nice. He's very chill, doesn't care. My Taichi sister, well, she's like female, so she doesn't have this egotistic problem. Now, I mean, egotistic is not good, but unfortunately I do have that tendency. So I get pretty upset when he was trash talking our training. I look at him with like a fake smile, right? It's a very hostile kind of fake smile. And he picked it up, so he's like, well, if you don't believe me, you can come and experience. So what he did was he offered his arms like this, like that. And he's like, you can try to push me and I'll redirect and absorb your force. So I grabbed his arm. Now, a lot of the time, people, when they do this, what they do is they just relax this arm, and obviously then you can't push him. or they do some kind of mind E intent redirection that they try to redirect my force. But he didn't expect me to have sufficient amount of structure power because I only go back for 3 months out of a year. So it turns out he didn't come to the park every week. So he actually don't see me that much. So he probably thought I was like one of the newest members, which I am. But he didn't know I spent years and years doing each one beforehand. So I grabbed his arm and he tried to do something, and I just readjust myself and then I send him out and his back fell onto a pillar. Okay. So what that tells you is that a lot of this doesn't work if our guy is experienced and he's actually out there to get you. Okay. He said my work if I just give him a stationary force. But why would I do that? Okay. I mean, unless it's previously agreed that we only apply one force, unchangeable, and then see if you can dissolve or redirect that force. Unless that's agreed upon, I wouldn't have to do that. So every time he tried to do something, I'm also adjusting myself until I find a connection in a split second from here to his body, and that split second I apply force and he goes out. So these kind of demos have its limitation. Okay, it doesn't always work. It depending on who they're demoing on, right? If someone that is experienced like me or even more experienced, chances are it is going to fail. So that's a very important thing to remember, right? That there are limitations to these demos, right? Being able to resist somebody pushing like Eric did. I mean, he's pushing me, I can resist. But I mean, if this guy was the mountain from Game of Thrones, then no matter what amount of quality I have, it's not going to work, right? There is a certain limit to the amount of force you can resist in any kind of demo like this. But given the idea of song, right, or the idea of song, of this magical quality, they should be able to resist any magnitude of force. Because the very concept of this phenomenon that defies the physical law. They're not transferring force through this skeletal structure. They're not there. The force is not there. They're empty. That's why the guy can't push under him. Or in that case, then you should be able to resist someone the size of the mountain, or you should be able to resist a cow or an elephant or a cock, right? I mean, if any force applied to them cannot be applied onto them, there shouldn't be a limitation to the system. But the reality is there is definitely a limitation to anyone's system when it comes to this kind of force absorption. I mean, that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
If he say you can't apply force to me, then the elephant shouldn't be able to apply force to me either.
Yeah, in a sense, yes. But I normally tend to think of it a little bit more classical mechanic kind of way.
Okay.
So when I push Chris, right? Obviously, there's nothing moving. Okay. So since we can't define law of physics, no one can actually. Law of physics are there. So when I push him and he's not moving, it simply means that either I'm not pushing him, or there's a force that are acting against my pushing, and everything is equal. So that's why there's a law. So if you say that with this whole relaxation or song property, that you can defy the law of physics, I'm not buying it. So it's simple as that. Yes, you do use it as a tool, as a technique, or as a phenomenon.
It's a concept.
Yes, it's a concept, okay? But the fact is that you need to look at the physical thing, what is actually happening in the physical world. We can't just defy physics, it doesn't work.
The force can't just disappear.
Yeah, the force doesn't,
it has to go somewhere.
Exactly, it has to go somewhere. So yeah, there's no disappearing of force and no defying, it's just simple mechanic. That when I push him, and he's not moving, and I'm not moving, there are only two things that can happen. Either I'm not pushing him at all, and I'm just touching him, which isn't the case, or he's producing enough force to push me back, basically. Newton's third law. So that's how I normally see it. Is that when you apply logic and when you apply physics, which nobody can defy it, you see, there's no mystical force has to end up somewhere. When he's not moving, it's not because the force disappeared, it's because he's providing enough force to push me back, in a sense. And that normally comes with the skeletal structure and
so in this case, basically, he's putting his foot into my skeletal structure, I'm relocating to the ground, and the ground relocating it back to him. It's like pushing a wall. You push
pushing a wall.
You get pushed back, but the foot has to go down and come back up. It doesn't disappear in the wall, right? I mean, if we are as small as Ant-Man, maybe you can quantum tunnel your force away. But we know, right? We real life-size humans, so quantum mechanics that doesn't work here, right? You need real classical physics here.
So that's how I normally see it, physics.
Right. So another thing that you need to keep in mind when observing these demos is to see the magnitude of force. Okay. What that means is, in a lot of these demos, often the guy applying the force is not applying 100% of the force that he could master. So he's only applying a certain degree of force. So unless a guy, for example, I have some issue with this practitioner, and I'm here to make him look bad, I usually don't apply 100% of the force. And in which case, the result that you're seeing is not as obvious. So if I'm in China, if this is a guy that I particularly don't like for some reason, for example, he disrespected my master, or he did something to my Taichi brother, then I will go there to purposely make him look bad, right? In which case, I would apply all the force I can master. And of course, I apply all my force when I'm testing about my own Taichi brother, because I want to give them the most honest feedback for their ability, to let them know how much they can actually do. But if I just meet somebody through a friend, for example, like a friend of mine say, let's meet this master, he's a friend of his, went there to meet him, then I'm not going to try to make him look bad on purposely, and therefore I won't apply 100% of my force. So a lot of times we watch these demos, it is a demo by a student who wouldn't apply 100% of the force, or it's like a demo done by someone who's interviewing a master, and in which case he's usually trying to be respectful to the guy, because if you have, for example, a YouTube channel where you interview different masters, if every time you interview a master, you try to start him over, then very soon nobody will want to come onto your show. So you have to understand that I'm not saying those demos are completely fake, but there is a limit that you might not see. So for example, if a guy is standing like this, there's only so much force he can take, right? If I'm going this way and applying more, all my structural force, he's going to fall back. It's just how, no matter how much song he has or how much connection he has, there's only so much force you can take given that structure, okay? And you can see by the reaction of the person, right? So when we're pushing each other, and I'm using so, you can see that he goes back gradually. That basically shows you the amount of force he's applying to me. It's not that much, right? If you apply more force to me, he would go back in a greater action, shall I say. I mean, that's correct, right?
Yes, yeah.
So he's only applying a portion of his force. And of course, if you're standing like this, you can't apply all your force because you're also limited to the structure. But if you're like this, you can apply a lot more force. But even this way, right? Let's take this demo again. So he can apply a portion of his force. Okay, go. And then I can, for example, pull him back that way. And you can see, he gradually moves back. Or he can apply more force.
Yep.
Then he will go back more. How do I put it?
Sudden.
More sudden. So the way he moves back would also dictate how much force he's actually applying. So you look at this demo, you can also keep that in mind to get a rough understanding of how much force the guy is actually applying. And in certain scenarios, if you apply more force than a certain threshold, the demo just simply wouldn't work. Okay. Another thing that we're gonna talk about is, for example, when someone says that, for example, relaxed thinking force, he will say that, for example, if he keeps his arm loose, if I apply, stiff force, you see the arm doesn't work. But if I apply relaxed thinking force, then he get pulled out. Now, of course, there is a change in quality, right? You can feel that.
Yeah.
When it's like arm force or stiff force, then if I connect the whole body, and relaxed thinking force, so there's a change in quality.
Yeah.
But another thing, right? If you keep relaxed and you don't resist the force, right? Then if you're not resisting the force, then when I'm applying this relaxed thinking force, I'm also basically stressing out his structure for him. And that's how he is able to move. If his structure is not stressed at all, then even if I apply relaxed thinking force, it is not going to move the rest. So when they're actually applying downwards, they're also slightly ever pulling this way. Okay, it's not a lot. I'm going to exaggerate, which will look like this. This is the exaggeration. But when they're going down, they're not just going down, they're going down and this way. And in doing so, they're basically pulling their own or the other guy's arm involuntarily to a point where it affects his structure. If his arm is completely relaxed and you only apply a force downwards, then no matter how much song or relaxing force you have, it cannot affect the guy's force. Which brings me to the next point, right? I've heard a lot of people doing demos claiming that, I can't pull my hand back. Somehow, once he's in the song state and does something, my arm gets stuck onto him and then I fall back. Personally, I have never ever experienced this. And it's not for lack of trying. I have met many practitioners who claim to be able to do this, especially people in the Wang Yongquan lineage, right? Those of you that know it, you should know already. If you don't, go YouTube or Google Wang Yongquan lineage and see what I'm talking about. So this is one of the big things I like to do is to have somebody push you on the chest or holding an arm or something, and then he will be like, he will do some quality, and then the guy couldn't pull his arm back. So it's almost like, one of the demos that we do is that commonly do the Wang Yongquan lineage might different from other lineages, but like the one is where I will hold him, I'll do this, and when into the quality, then I start tiptoeing like this, and then at this point is where people will say, I can't pull my hand back and I'm getting sucked into him. In other lineages, they will probably do something where the guy push him, let's say push him on the chest again, and then he will be like, at a single point, he will be like, he will claim that, okay, push more, right? And then he will basically turn this way, and then the guy will say at that moment he can't pull his hand off, and he turns. Now, so far, right, none of these demos worked on me. And the reason for that is because you can't actually pull your hand out. It doesn't make sense that you can't pull your hand out. The fact that they feel like they can't pull the hand out is because they are still applying that force. So let's take the chest for example. If I'm applying a force, obviously I can't pull my hand back. And when he's connected to me, so to speak, and you song and absorbing the force down with his structure, he's basically absorbing my power instead of repelling my power, right? So if I'm pushing against him actively, then I'm repelling his power, and therefore he can easily pull it back. But if he's pushing in, and I'm not repelling, but I'm not giving away either, then it does feel almost like you're being sucked in. But, okay, in that moment, okay, if he then suddenly turns, then you are going to be, because of the change of vector, force, and your structure, you will go sideways. And in that split moment, yes, you can't pull your hand back. Okay, that is true because you already dedicated that force, and it happened before you can pull it back. However, if I'm expecting him to do that, and I put a force there, the moment I feel a change in his, I can change with him and pull him that way. I can push him that way. Okay? So it's a matter of whether are you expecting it or not. And even if I don't expect him to turn out that exactly, but if again I'm there to try to make this guy look bad, I'm going to approach it like I'm doing push hand. Right? I'm not going to approach it like a dumb big force just going there. I'm going to push him but adjust my body in such a way that I'm ready for change. Okay? This is the kind of zone or quality that you have to take when you're doing push hand. When you're doing push hand, we're not just doing circles here, right? Every moment I'm trying to change and to see where he's going. So if I'm in that state of mind, anything he changes on his body, I can see, I can feel, and I'm able to pull my force back before it happens. All I need to do is basically relax this portion, cut off my foot from the elbow, and then there will be nothing here. And no matter what he does, he will not be able to affect the rest of my body. And that in Taichi is what we call separation of yin and yang, which I've made 2 videos on that already, so we're not going to talk about it here. But in a split second, if you can separate yin and yang, then you can pull your hand back. Same with the demo that my master does, where I hold him this way, I push him, and then he's able to draw me in. It's almost something like this, right? So if he push it in, so I can either push it with raw force, or I can keep the point and there it's almost feel like it's been drawn in. Right? Do you feel that? Yeah. Obviously he's not sensitive. I'm gonna put a video here where I was demonstrating this on my own Taichi brother when he came to South Africa for a visit. And you can see when someone is sensitive, then it looks much, the response is much more exaggerated. Right, so as you can see, you can like that. And this then, once I have that kind of connection, I can then add in the actual structure. Now, when someone is like this, right? So when someone is going this way, they will say that I can't pull my hand back. But when I try this with my own master, I can tell you with certainty that I can pull my hand back. Okay. All I need to do is to stop pushing, and then it will come back. I don't know why some people struggle to stop pushing, maybe because they get drawn in. But if you do enough internal structure practice and push hand, you should be able to control every joint and cut off connections however you see fit. In which case, you actually can stop pushing. But the problem here is, okay, with my own master, the moment I stop pushing, he will sense that same moment and he will send the force and I'll be flying backwards. So the actual reason why I can't pull my hand back is because of the repercussion. Because he's waiting for me to do that to hit me. That's the real reason why I can't pull my hand back. It's not because of some internal mystical quality that let my hand stuck onto him. Okay, it's not that. So what actually happens is initially I'm applying a force to him, and he's drawing my force in by aligning his structure and then using Shen and other qualities so that I don't feel resistant. I feel like I'm pushing into him. And then when he empties out, it's basically the time where my initial force is absorbed into his frame, and at that moment I lose this root. So in order to create another force, I need to drop my root, disconnect, and generate another force. By the time it takes me to do that, he's going to send me out. He doesn't give me the time to generate another force. That's the only real reason why at that given moment I can't pull my hand out. Anyone who doesn't have the ability to do that, I can very comfortably readjust my structure, pull my hand out, do another force. Okay, just like other times where I've experienced with other practitioners where they'll have a structure, whether it's this or the chairs or wherever else, depending on the lineage, they have different preferences. And I usually oblige them with whatever preference they want. And then let's say it's like this, right? I'll apply a force, and then he will connect himself, use E intent to redirect it, and then I'll feel my force get absorbed to the ground. And usually by then, he succeeded. But if I'm here to make him look bad, I'll just simply generate another force, and I'll catch him before he can absorb the second force, and he will still go out. So there's a lot of small things that goes on in these demos that you might not know. Okay, what you see is not always the full extent of what can happen. Okay, if I have malicious intent, I can stuff over so many different Taichi masters demo that you can see on YouTube. It's just a matter of how well you know your force. Okay, every time he tries to redirect my force, I just readjust and generate another force. Right? Every time he does it, I just readjust and generate another force, and he will never be able to properly redirect that force. So these are all subtleties and small things that people don't like to talk about. But if you don't know these things, then often you are going to be misled by what they do talk about, and at the end of the day, you basically expect this to be something completely different. In the meantime, it's basically the four fundamental forces plus other slightly metaphysical concepts like Shen and E and all of that. But like my previous video on this topic, I've already said, those are just our mental control points, right? They most certainly have something that they affect physically on our body. Okay, E and Shen does not exist completely in in mid-air, right? They have to be bound to something on our body. We don't fully know what, but when I change my E or change my Shen, something happened to the body, and that's what affected. It's not that my body does nothing, I just think about it, and then something happened, right? I mean, I wish we were all like Xavier, but or Jean Grey if you're female, but yeah, I don't think there are people like that in reality. But there are different ways to explain the same phenomenon. Some are less true than others in terms of what physically happens. Okay. You know, another demo is like you know, where he pushes this right, and then you know, if I normally just pull, I just do this, nothing happens. But if I relax in the sink, then you know he gets pushed out. Essentially, you know, again, the same quality, and once the quality is established, I just let my weight weigh on him, right? But if you can't relax your muscles, then you're holding your own weight, and it doesn't weigh on him. I mean, what do you feel in this difference?
Well, on the receiver end, I don't really feel. There's only one thing that is different. So as I was pushing him, right, it feels like that I can resist him, and then I can no longer.
Okay, does my body feel heavier?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say your body feels heavier. It's more like your push feels heavier.
Okay.
Let's just put that way. So I'm pushing. I'm holding his push, pushing. Okay, everything is fine. And then suddenly there's an extra force from your push that I couldn't resist. So that's what it feels like.
Okay, so again, keep in mind that I'm not particularly great at these demos, so there are people out there who do demos far better. But the principle, like I said, is always the same, right? So you cannot do these demos without scheduled force. And if someone who does these demos without scheduled force, if they meet somebody like me, they will fall on their ass 100% of the time, okay? So the people who can successfully do these demos on almost everyone, then most certainly they have scheduled force, whether they talk about it or not. Okay, so there's no way out of this. Either you have it, you might not talk about it, and you disguise it as something else, which probably hint towards dishonesty, but then you can't do this kind of demo on almost everyone, or you can only do it on selected few people who are sensitive or who are weaker, and then you don't employ scheduled force. There is no third way in this kind of situation. Okay, so just what exactly the purpose and the reason of why we have this kind of demos? Because these demos, they don't actually translate directly into practicality. I mean, you don't want people to push your chest, you want people to push your stomach, you don't want people, you know, to push like this. But these are all just originally, right? Other than now, they're becoming more like propaganda, performance to attract students. But originally, they're just ways to test your structure in certain ways. But they are not the end goal, right? The end goal is to apply this kind of quality into an actual self-defense method or application. So why do people why is there a concept of absorbing force, you know, like letting the guy loose root and stick on you and all of that? In our system, we have a very simple test that we practice. You know, it's when people grab the wrist, so this represents the hardest connection, right? It's easier to use the chest or the stomach. The closer it is to the core, the easier it is to control. The further it is from the core, like the arm, the wrist, is harder it is. So what we do is, you know, he will push me, and I can push harder, right? So, you know, keep pushing. So at this point, you know, I can slightly slide, right? Now in this point, now suddenly you song and now generate another force. So you keep pushing, right? And you see how he moves back. So in a split moment, I change my structure internally, and you know, you feel that, right? So yeah. Certain moments, what do you feel?
Yeah, it's almost like, you know, I don't know whether does it happen in your office, but this is a very classical joke, right? It's about how overtime actually comes to be. Boss gives you a pile of paper, right? It's like, it's heavy. And suddenly he gives you another 2 times more, and that's guaranteed gonna pass 5 o'clock, and you're gonna be overtime. So that's what it feels like. That I'm holding a pile of paper, I'm pushing, and then suddenly somebody drop extra files onto me.
But do you, for split second, feel your supporting point disappears?
Yeah, well, in a sense, it doesn't disappear. It got overwhelmed.
Okay, so let's get in here, right? So push.
Yep.
So here, do you feel that?
Yes, yeah.
Do you feel for a moment something?
Well, subtly, yeah. Or should I say, like, it's only when you mention it. Let's put it this way. But obviously, I'm kind of anticipating you. If I'm not fully committed to the force, right? Then I'll feel more pronounced. But because I'm not fully committed, I still got my structure and stuff like that. So that's why I don't really feel as pronounced. But I would imagine if you ask me to do a bow stance and push into your hand or hold your wrist, then I will start moving forward.
Yeah, so we don't need to move forward, but you feel like a moment of instability.
Yes,
or the contact point shift. And then another force pushes you back.
Yeah, there's definitely another force. Like suddenly somebody dropped another 2 tons onto my arm. So a new force comes in.
So that moment is basically the whole purpose of this whole going in, right? The force going down. Now, obviously, I'm not doing this very well. My master does a lot better. But the principle is basically the same, right? So we have 2 forces that are connected. He's pushing me and I'm pushing him. And if he's stronger, then I'm going to get pushed back. And in this moment, keep pushing, right? If I want to just push him back, it's very hard because I'm already engaged or I'm committed. So to want to push him, I need to relax myself. But I can't because he's applying force. Which is why I suddenly change the connection and then another force will come out. So that split moment is what Taichi talks about when they say 引进落空, when you bring the force in and you make a drop. Of course, like I keep saying, I'm not doing it to its full capacity. My master or someone better, training than me, would be able to do this more pronounced. But the principle stays the same, and that's the reason why all these testing were meant for. For example, whether he's pushing my chest here, or any of the other demos that we've shown, basically to see if you can absorb the incoming force into the body or into the ground, and at the same time generate another force. That's the real reason behind it. And why is this important is because anytime that I'm contacting him and I meet a resistance, I'm able to do a minor change to the contact point and apply another force. So for example, in the push and contact, right? If I'm pushing this way and I meet a resistance, of course you can use motion to move out and punch in, or squeeze him and pull him that way. There's nothing you can do with motion, which are correct, nothing wrong with it. Or if your training is sufficiently better than the other guy, what you can also do is I feel a resistance, I absorb and I push it out again. You feel that slight change?
Yeah.
And that is basically the real meaning of dissipating force, right? Or 化力 in Taichi. Often people like to think 化力 is using a motion, like if he's pushing me here, I'm gonna draw him that way and come back, that's 化力. The problem with this is it doesn't work on people who are experienced. I've never had a single person apply this to me successfully because the moment he changes, like I'm pushing and you turn it that way, right? I'm gonna go back and push it. Why must I follow that on? Okay, and some of you might, some people might say that if he's structure fully connected and he's in the right zone quality, then I can't, let go of my arm, which obviously Eric can't do, but let's assume the person he represents can do that. And I've already explained how I can simply just cut off this connection and pivot on the elbow, and this part of my arm will become dead, and in that case, no matter how connected he is, unless he's straight in my center, which then I had to stop him from getting to my center. If he's actually trying to put the force that way, I'm not going to keep my arm connected. I can simply cut it off and generate another force. So personally, I've never experienced this on anyone that successfully are able to use a motion and I wasn't able to change. Okay, and I believe that's because I do a lot of push hand before. When I was doing each one, we do push hand every week, at least twice or three times a week. And for 2 hours per day, we just do it's not competitive, it's more like resisting push hands. We don't do it like softly, we actually try to throw each other on the asses. So I become very used to sensing smooth changing in direction of the limb. So in that regard, this Huajin doesn't work, which is why when I was looking for Taichi masters, I made a few before my own master, and they were not satisfying because they try to hua my li, right? They try to throw my force by motion, and every time they do that, I just chant and I hit them or I push them. My master was the only master that I met at that time who, when I apply a force to him, he dissolved by force without moving, so I couldn't tell. And when it happened, it's so quick. Before I can readjust, his force hits me and I fly back. Because I can sense it the moment it happened, right? So I'm pushing, the moment he hua, I can still sense it, but I can't sense it beforehand because his arm is not moving back. If his arm is moving back, I can push him in and follow his motion and get to an advantageous position for myself. But when he hua li, it happens so fast that I don't feel it from the motion. And when I realize that my force is being drawn in, before I can readjust for another force, his force comes back and hits me outwards. So in my experience, that's the only practical way of applying this force. Alright, so anything you want to add?
No, that's not about it.
Alright, so I hope this video has been interesting, and I hope it has dispelled this whole misconception or this mystifying of the idea of song, of relaxation, and overcomplication of the concept of song, emptiness, and internal quality. Okay? I mean, no doubt you have to reach this through stance training, through form training, through single exercises. So there's no doubt about that. So I'm not doubting anyone's training method. I'm just giving you a different explanation to what you typically hear of what actually achieves this result. So lastly, I would like to reinforce the quote, right? Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. But the moment you tell yourself there are no magic in this world, then everything you see is either a trick, an illusion, or a mechanic that you don't yet understand. And any real Chinese martial art had to be built on mechanics. And all mechanics from any internal martial art can be basically summarized in the four fundamental forces of internal, which I've already made videos on. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you do, please subscribe on my YouTube channel. And if you can support me on Patreon, that would be greatly appreciated. And as always, I've always been very appreciative to all my Patreon supporters. Feel free to message me anytime of any questions or past content, suggestions for future content, or anything else, right? And you can tell me how I can be of better service to you. So thanks for watching TriEssence Martial Art channel. Keep safe out there, and I'll see you next time.
Okay.